Welcome to today's webinar, New Staff Section Officer Orientation, brought to you by NCSL. All lines have been placed on listen-only mode to provide favorable sound quality. If you would like to submit a question or comment at any time during the webinar, you may use the chat box located on the lower right-hand side of your screen. Simply type your message into the box and click on the Send button. If you should require assistance throughout the conference, please press *0. It is now my pleasure to turn the floor over to Patsy Spaw.
Hello, everyone, and welcome, and thank you for joining us today for NCSL's New Staff Section Orientation webinar. My name is Patsy Spaw. I'm Secretary of the Texas Senate and Staff Chair of NCSL, and I am delighted and excited that you found time to join us today between the elections, the holidays, your own legislature's orientation, and, yes, the start of session. But I know it will be an informative discussion about your new role as Staff Section Officer and how that role fits into NCSL and into the Legislative Staff Coordinating Committee, better known to most of us as LSCC. We used to do this presentation at NCSL's Legislative Summit each summer, but since half of the staff sections don't elect their officers until their professional development seminars in the fall, we thought this timing would reach more people. So we didn't have it in Chicago this summer, and this is our trial run. I hope you agree that this is the best way to reach everyone. Now, whether you're a new staff section officer or a legislative staffer wanting to learn more about NCSL and LSCC, I know that you'll benefit from what you're about to hear and to see. We have 3 presenters today, all of whom have experience as staff section officers. Peggy Piety, Staff Attorney in the Indiana Legislative Services Agency and Chair of the Staff Section Officers. Jay Pearson, House Information and Communications Services Director with the Virginia House of Delegates, and Rick DeLeon, Sergeant-at-Arms for the Texas Senate. Now I'll turn it over to Peggy for an overview of the webinar.
Okay. Thanks, Patsy. Hi. I'd like to add my welcome to Patsy's, and thank you for attending the webinar. Here's what we plan to cover. First, we'll give you some information about NCSL's staff sections, staff networks, and as Patsy said, the Legislative Staff Coordinating Committee, LSCC. Then we'll tell you a little bit about NCSL, including its organizational structure, and the Executive Committee, which is the governing body of NCSL, and NCSL's Executive Director, Bill Pound. Next, we'll talk about the standing committees, which are forums for dealing with federal and state issues of interest to all state legislatures. And then we'll tell you a little bit more about the Legislative Staff Coordinating Committee, LSCC. And let me tell you, as a staff section officer, you are a member of the LSCC. Finally, all of the panelists will share a tip with you on what we wish we had known as new LSCC members, and then we'll take your questions. To start off, Jay Pearson is going to talk about the NCSL staff section. Jay?
Hi, yes, and welcome. NCSL has 10 staff sections. ASLCS, American Society of Legislative Clerks and Secretaries. LSS, Leadership Staff Section. LSSS, Legal Services Staff Section. LINKS, Legislative Information and Communication Staff Section. LRL, Legislative Research Librarian Staff Section. NALFO, National Association of Legislative Fiscal Offices. NALIT, NALIT, National Association of Legislative Information Technology. NLPES, National Legislative Program Evaluation Society. NLSSA, National Legislative Services and Security Association. RACSS, Research and Committee Staff Section. Also, there are 3 other staff networks. LESN, Legislative Education Staff Network, represents all staff responsible for education policy and finance. LHSN, Legislative Health Staff Network, represents all staff responsibility for health policy and finance. And to wrap the 10th one up is PSN, Personal Staff Network, represents staff who work directly for legislators, either in the Capitol or a district office. These are the 10 staff sections that fall under the NCSL staff sections here. And every staffer in the legislative process has a staff section to belong to. And that is what brings us here today with the new staff staff officers and their duties. The responsibilities of staff officers would be to represent their staff section at LSCC, as well as be a team leader, go back to their staff sections with the information that they need from the LSCC meetings. Help available. Help is available. NCSL is a great place to start, and with that, every staff section has a liaison between NCSL and that staff section. They are there hands-on to help guide us through anything that we need, as well as other staffers in the United States that work with our related fields. The NCSL website has a web page for every staff section, and if you log on there and you go under legislative staff, it breaks down all the staff sections. You click it on, and it breaks down everybody's executive committee who's on it, the responsibilities of that staff section, as well as the bylaws, any upcoming news, when they might be meeting. But there's all of these information is on that home page with that. And also, you know, you don't hesitate for your staff section to call the officers and find out information as well. Also, newsletters, listservs, and other tools. I'm with Links, so we have a newsletter, and that's how we reach out to our staff section, as well as listservs. And that goes with that because when we do the newsletters, it is responsible for us to send it out to the listserv for those folks in their staff section that might not be able to meet with their PDS. And other tools will be like today, having webinars, informing staff sections and staff section officers of what's going on out there and trying to stay in touch with their areas. Next. The Legislative Staff Coordinating Committee is the operation of staff sections out there, and more of that will be coming later when we start talking about the Coordinating Standing Committee, and I'm not going to touch base about that because that's going to come back shortly. The chairs and vice chairs of staff sections, what do they do as members on LSCC? Well, they are a member. Again, like I was saying earlier, these chairs and vice chairs will directly report to LSCC committee, as well as they will directly report back to their staff section to let them know the changes that might be going on in the committees and the upcoming meetings going on throughout the year. LSCC is where the action is, and the staff with NCSL and its members are a great resource. So with this introduction, I've just given you with the 10 staff sections and who they are and what they do. Never hesitate to contact NCSL because they're members just as well as we are. Now I'm going to turn it back over to Peggy.
Okay, thanks, Jay. Okay, here's the next slide. And now that you've learned a little bit about the staff sections, we're going to discuss, for the balance of the presentation, some more information about NCSL, its organizational structure, and then we're going to concentrate on LSCC, since that's where you'll have the most interest and spend your most time, at least initially. To give you a little information about NCSL's organization structure and governance, I'm going to turn to Rick DeLeon. Rick?
Thank you, Peggy. Hello to everyone, and welcome to the webinar. If you'll look at the slide here, the NCSL organization, right in the center is the Executive Committee. And this will be an overview of the organizational structure. The next slide after this one will give more detail of the Executive Committee. The focus of the discussion, however, will be on the Executive Committee. If you'll look to the left, the bottom left, it lists the staff sections, and over to the right are the standing committees. We'll give you a couple of seconds to look at that to see how the organizational structure is outlined. And like Jay said, everyone has a staff section that they belong to or can participate in. Next. Now here we have the Executive Committee. The Executive Committee is made up of 62 members, 41 legislators, 21 legislative staff, the legislative staff members and 3 officers, 16 at-large, 2 staff co-chairs of the NCSL standing committees. Legislative officers are President, President-elect, Vice President, and immediate past President. NCSL staff officers are Staff Chair, Staff Vice Chair, and immediate past staff chair. Thank you. The Executive Director, Mr. Bill Pounds, he reports to the Executive Committee and oversees 2 offices. One office is located in Denver, Colorado. This is the main headquarters for NCSL. Their Washington, D.C. office, their office lobbies D.C. on behalf of the state. Next.
Thanks, Rick. This is Peggy. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the NCSL standing committees. The NCSL standing committees are another part of NCSL, and what they basically do is deal with federal and state issues of interest to all state legislatures through programs and through other mechanisms. One of the primary functions of the standing committees is to develop positions on federal policies that affect the states, and that in order to guide NCSL's lobbying efforts in Washington, D.C. And they also are a forum to share innovative state policies among the states. Legislators and legislative staff are members and officers of the standing committee, and they direct the committee's activities. Legislative staff are full participants in the standing committees, except that staff does not vote on the adoption of federal policy positions. Next. Here is a list of NCSL's 10 standing committees. They cover the policy areas that state legislatures are involved in, and the jurisdiction of these committees is similar to committees in your state legislatures. These standing committees meet 3 times a year, typically in the fall and spring forums and at the Legislative Summit. I want to talk a little bit about the Legislative Effective Committee for just a couple minutes. This is a committee that's particularly popular with legislative staff because it deals with things like strategies, practices, and procedures for making legislators, staff, and legislatures more effective. The kind of issues this committee looks at are education and training for legislatures and legislative staff, legislative structure and management, rules and procedures, leadership, committees, staffing, information resources, constitutional issues and ethics. And this committee also addresses topics concerning the executive branch of government and the congressional procedures and reform. If you'd like to be more involved in NCSL, consider joining a standing committee. Next. Now that you have some background on NCSL and its structures and governance, let's talk a little bit more about the Legislative Staff Coordinating Committee, or the LSCC. And Jay will tell you a little bit about who is a member of the LSCC and what the LSCC's responsibilities are.
Yes, thank you, Peggy. The LSCC organizational chart, as you see on the screen, I'll give you a couple seconds to look that over. But we've all seen this chart over and over again, and this is the updated one. So I'll give you a couple seconds to take a look at it. Okay, if you start at the very top, you have the NCSL staff officers. That's combined by the staff chair, staff vice chair, and immediate past staff chair. And then you break down, and then you have the LSCC committee, which is formed by the staff section officers, which to the right of your screen, you have the list of those which I did go over previously in the presentation here of how many on that committee, and it's 2. It's the chair and it's the vice chair from the staff sections. In the middle bubble there, you have a breakdown of exactly what LSCC does. They oversee the division of NCSL. They work with the staff sections and networking with other staff sections to meet with their PDSs. They promote professional development and ideas. You get all kind of ideas from other legislative staff when you meet at the LSCC meetings. And also you advise NCSL on anything that might be going on in your state, and they're there to be very helpful with that. So you have that big bubble in the middle, and the members at large on the side to the right, as well as the ones to the left, and the ones at the bottom there, they all come together to form this LSCC committee, and that is all about what we're talking about today. Next. LSCC, that's us. The responsibilities that that we have, exchanging ideas, identifying solutions, and working out legislative staff problems. Part of joining a staff section and being an officer is to better educate everyone on what we do and to help promote the staff sections and what we do, and to know that there's a place out there, it's called NCSL, to help us develop these programs with that. And advice that you get from the advice you give the NCSL Executive Committee. Now, all of us might not serve on that. You're on the LACC committee, but you have to run for office for the big executive committee, so that's something, the next step you can take. And that staff section officers, you give that advice back to them to take it to that meeting with that. Next.
Okay, thanks, Jay.
Thanks, Peggy.
Rick's going to do the next part of the webinar. He's going to talk a little bit about the LSC subcommittees and work groups. Rick?
Thank you, Peggy. The LSCC subcommittees, you'll see here on the screen, the members are appointed by the NCSL staff chair to serve on the subcommittees for LSCC. Each member serves on at least one subcommittee. Each new officer is assigned to at least one of these committees. The staff chair creates an appointment to the subcommittees. For this year, we have 3. The staff chair also assigns the charges for each of the subcommittee. I'll give a brief overview of some of the charges for this year. The subcommittees, as you see on the screen, is the Information Technology and NCSL website review, Legislative Institution, Program, Professional Development, and Member Outreach. I'll give you just some brief information on each one. The Information Technology and NCSL website review. Some of their charges are to promote e-learning opportunities, including webinars, e-learning tools, and to oversee webinar development and promotion. Along with that is to work with the NCSL staff and executive committee and provide an annual report on the state of technology and legislatures. The next one, legislative institution, are to develop and recommend strategies for better preparing LSCC members for their responsibilities, to plan to standardize LSCC committee structure, create committee notebooks containing responsibilities, guidelines, final reports, and recommendations from previous committees. The last one, the program, professional development, and member outreach. Part of their charges would be to be marketing LSCC sessions at the Legislative Summit. This year will be, or next year in 2013, it will be in Atlanta, to oversee and promote the legislative staff professional development event, and including the professional development seminars for each section. Develop strategies and promote outreach to legislative staff, for instance, promotion of legislative service as a career. Next. The LSCC subcommittees are critical in the development of ideas and the products to improve both NCSL and staff section services. For example, to develop distance learning tools such as webinars and podcasts, and for developing programs for staff. The last one, the network, and network, I can't emphasize that enough. This is an excellent opportunity to meet your counterpart from both other states and other countries. It's an excellent resource for sharing information, ideas, as Jay had stated earlier. It lets you know what's happening in other states, things to look for in your state. It may not be happening there yet, but you know that it may just be a matter of time before you're going to be faced with an issue or a subject. But the networking opportunities are incredible and infinite. Next. Peggy, thank you.
Okay, Rick, do you want to talk a little bit about this year's work group?
The work groups, LSCC, yes ma'am. staff may also serve on the work groups. Each of the staff section officers can serve in this work group, such as myself. Right now, I am in my section. It's called the President of LSCC, and I'm on this work group to set up and develop and present this webinar. The standing committees, as we stated earlier in the organizational chart, you can see on there where some of the standing committees are, and if you have an interest, of course, you can participate in those. Strategic planning is also part of the work group's charge to develop strategic planning. The meetings for LSCC, we meet in conjunction with the executive committee, and as I think Peggy had stated earlier, we meet at least twice during the year and once at the NCSL Legislative Summit. And each section should have at least one representative at these meetings.
Okay, thanks, Rick. This is Peggy, and I'm going to continue talking a little bit more about the LSCC meetings. The slide in front of you shows you the dates of the remaining LSCC meetings for this year. As Rick said, typically the LSCC meets in conjunction with the executive committee, and usually the LSCC will meet on a Friday, and the executive committee will meet on the Saturday of the weekend dates that you see there. And during the LSCC meetings, the subcommittees, work groups, and task forces that we've talked about meet, and there's at least one meeting of the entire LSCC. And the staff chair serves as the chair of the entire LSCC. And during those meetings, the subcommittees, work groups, task forces report on their activities. The NCSL executive director typically makes a report, and there is a preview of the executive committee and the executive committee's subcommittees meetings and activities. And before each meeting, you'll receive in the mail, or you can access online, a bound packet of information, which is the agenda book. And this book is important. You'll need to bring it to the meeting. And the book has the meeting schedule, agendas, and other information in connection with the LSCC meeting. And as you can probably tell, and as Rick has told you, it's important that each staff section have at least one representative at every LSCC meeting. And just to tell you, the future LSCC meetings, there's a January meeting, January 25th and 26th in Santa Barbara, California, May 31st and June 1, 2013 in Boston, Massachusetts, and then August 11 through 15, 2013 at the Legislative Summit in Atlanta, Georgia. Next. This slide lists a few resources that you may find of value in connection with your service on the LSCC. As we've told you, for the staff, each staff section has a staff liaison, so does each subcommittee, work group, and the entire LSCC. Each of those groups has an NCSL staff liaison. These people are terrific resources for you, and I would encourage you to ask them for help or ask them of any questions that you have. Another great resource developed by Patsy Spa is the LSCC Working for You booklet. If you haven't seen this yet, or even if you have, Patsy is going to email electronic copies to all of the staff section officers, and this will repeat a lot of the information you've heard today, but it's a great reference, and I encourage you to take a look at it. LSCC also has a mentorship program in which all new members of LSCC are paired with an experienced LSCC member, and you should receive a contact before the next LSCC meeting with your mentor. And use this person. This person is your friend when you come to your first LSCC meeting. They can help you answer any questions that you have, perhaps meet you for breakfast during the meetings, etc. So feel free to rely on your mentor. Another resource that LSCC has are listservs. This is a discussion group that NCSL has created for the full LSCC, and then each subcommittee and each work group has a listserv. And everyone is encouraged to use these listservs, and you'll probably receive information through those listservs as well. And a final resource, which Jay has already talked about, is the NCSL website. which contains a wealth of information, as you probably already know. And as Jay has already told you, the LSCC has a web page on the website which has a lot of the information that you need as a member of the LSCC. Next. Your charge as a member of the LSCC and as a staff section officer is simple. You are the connection between your staff section and the LSCC. So as we've said earlier, bring information, questions, concerns from your staff section to the LSCC, and then take information and solicit input from your staff sections regarding LSCC initiatives and projects. That's not very hard, and it's a lot of fun. So next. Just some final thoughts. NCSL and LSCC are only as strong as their members. I'll tell you, and you'll find out soon, we're really strong already, but we can be stronger, and we're counting on you to help us. And a little time and effort go a long way, and like a lot of other things in life, what you get out of being a staff section officer depends upon what you put in. So I would encourage you to jump in. And don't be afraid to ask questions. You'll get a chance to do that in just a few minutes. But before that, each of us is going to share a tip with you along the lines of what I wish I knew as a new LSCC member. And here's one tip. And we've already said you'll get a briefing book or an agenda book. And on the front it will say something like NCSL Executive Committee Agenda Book. But don't be fooled by that title. If you go to the back of the book about halfway through, that's where all the LSCC meeting information is. So don't throw that book away. Bring it to the meeting, and it'll give you all the information that you need to participate. Jay?
Yes, thank you, Peggy. Yes, I would agree with Peggy as well. The first time I did get the executive book in the mail, I didn't think it was related to me at all. But as I looked through the agenda book in the very back, it did say LSCC, so I knew that was my part. So I bookmarked it and know that information from then on back would pertain to me and something that I will be working with while I was at the LSCC meeting. One of the things also that I'll have to take into this, a lot of times when you go to conferences and things and you think it's everything, you know, you really need to dress up or wear this, but it's very casual, laid back. As we call it here in Virginia, we call it capital casual. So the guys, you necessarily don't really need to wear a shirt and tie every day. You wear khakis and a button-up shirt. So it's a really laid back meeting, and everybody is very helpful. And again, if we've stressed all the way through, don't hesitate to ask questions. I would never be afraid to do that because no question is ever wrong. You have to go through that. So my tip would be is just these LCC meetings are very, very laid back and very casual. But again, as we emphasize, never hesitate to ask the question. Rick?
Thank you. My tip, along with Jay, about the attire, when I first went, I wasn't sure. But as everybody has stated, please ask questions. I reached out to several people I knew that were going, and for me, being an LSSA, it was extremely helpful to understand what other states were going through and what they were facing. About the agenda book, what Peggy said and what Jay said, I want to echo as well, to understand what part of the book applies to you and to actually bring the book with you. All these things came to me by asking questions of the people that spoke before me. And I'm still relatively new to this, but I love participating and have enjoyed having the opportunity to make a contribution. Next.
Okay. I want to thank all the participants for their time and hope this has been valuable and you've learned some additional information about the staff sections, LSCC, and NCSL. Now I'd like to turn it over to Patsy for questions. Patsy?
Okay. We're just really thanking y'all for attending today, aren't we? We are glad that you are participating. And let's see, we've got some questions online here. And I don't know, we didn't discuss exactly how we wanted to do this, but the first question I see up here is, can non-executive committee members attend the executive committee meeting? Not only that, are we expected to do so? Peggy, would you like to answer that question?
Yeah, The first part of the question is, can non-executive committee members attend the executive committee? And the answer to that question is yes, absolutely. You're welcome to attend any and all meetings of the executive committee, the subcommittee meetings or the full executive committee. But I would say you're not expected to attend if you're just a member of LSCC. As a staff section officer. If you're an at-large member or you're a co-chair of the standing committees, you are a member of the executive committee, so yes, you're expected to attend. But staff officers are not expected to attend, but you're welcome to do so.
Yes. And if I might add, as a tip, my very first LSCC meeting, I wasn't sure about the executive committee meetings and whether I was invited or not. And I attended it, and I sat at the table, and everyone was very gracious to me. But actually, unless you are on the executive committee, you don't sit at the table. You sit on the sides of the wall. Everyone is welcome. They encourage everyone to come. You're not expected to come. And also, that's when I learned that the legislative staff executive committee members are also members of LSCC. It's been confusing to all of us. Next question I have is, how structured are the LSCC meetings? We've kind of talked about that. What do the agendas typically look like? You know, time-wise, what are we talking about? How are they managed? Jay, would you like to answer that?
Sure, Patsy. Yeah, so far as how structured the LSCC meetings are, they usually last about approximately an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, depending on the time frame. But the agenda is the staff section officers sitting around the LSCC table with the and they're reporting back from their committees on what they've done while at the meeting. But first, briefly, the staff chair actually gives a report from themselves on things, and they just go around the room at different ones, and all the chairs will report of their committee. Also, we'll talk about, touch base about where their PDS might be, who might be joining their PDS, and any other committee information that they might have reporting back to that committee. But it could last about an hour and a half, 2 hours.
I don't have any more questions, but I would like to add another comment, and I'll give our presenters another opportunity if they'd like to say anything else. But it's really important for our staff section officers to understand that this is your opportunity to represent your staff section. Your staff section probably has suggestions for NCSL. They have some advice. They may even have some criticisms or some problems. This is the place where you will be heard, and that's why it is so important that someone from your staff section attend these meetings. If neither the chair or the vice chair can attend, it would be wonderful if you would designate someone to attend for your staff section. It's really important for the growth of your staff section, for the stability of your staff section, that you have someone there, because you will be heard. And not only that, the benefits are so great. I'm a longtime member of the Clerks and Secretaries Association, and I have the most wonderful friends throughout this country. Little did I realize what wonderful friends I would make in the other staff sections by simply being on LSCC and then running later for the executive committee. So I really want to encourage you to get involved, be excited about it, reach out, reach across the staff sections. There is a place for everyone, and we have so much to share with each other. And so, as I tell everyone, I'm the cheerleader for this, but I believe it with all my heart, and I just really hope that you'll get excited about it, even more so than you are. Does anyone else want to share anything?
I'll step in, Patsy.
Okay.
Yes, and when I first started with Links, one of the staff sections, I just attended for a couple of them, and I kind of just wanted to sit back and actually watch and see what goes on. And then finally, one time I wanted to get more involved, so I ran for vice chair, and I won that, and then I became chair of that. But one of the things is you were there to represent that staff section, and you're there for a reason. And they've chosen you to be there and to lead them. and be involved. And it's one of the things is you can attend PDSs and just attend those, and maybe go. It's a great state, you get a trip or whatever like that. But to me, I don't think it's very beneficial. I mean, you're going to these staff section meetings to meet people, to network, and again, everyone's there to work together. And like Patsy's saying, never hesitate to cross over to another staff section to ask questions or to integrate with each other, because that's why we're all there. We all, as I always say, we're all part of this one legislative family. And being with NCSL and LSCC, it's been a great part of my job to help better educate me with things that go on throughout the year.
Very good. Anyone else?
I'd like to, this is Rick. I want to echo what everyone else has said to the audience. When I first started, like Patsy said, I didn't know where to sit. I tended to just kind of find a quiet corner and just listen. When I got involved with my staff section, the things they told me and the things you've heard today ring absolutely true. Ask questions, and the best way to learn is get involved. Even with this webinar at the meeting in Phoenix, the question was posed about the development of the webinar, and I raised my hand. I said, I've never done one, but I'll be glad to help. And here I am, help develop it with Jay, and thus help present it. The best way to get involved and the best way to learn is just ask some questions and then jump in. Thank you.
Very good.
Yeah. And this is Peggy, and I'll just add on. This is another tip that I had, and it kind of follows on with what everyone else has said. When you go to the LSCC meeting, there's usually a reception in the evening, and I would encourage you not to blow off that reception, but to go and meet people and talk to them, because this is one of the great benefits, as everybody has said, is to you meet legislative staff from all across the country, and I, like everyone else on the webinar, has made some really good friends, people that I wouldn't have known otherwise if I hadn't been involved in NCSL. So I would encourage you to be enthusiastic to come in and to meet people. We're generally friendly, and we love to meet you, and we love to work with you, and I can't wait to get started. So we'll see you guys in California.
Yeah, perfect. Well, another question has come up, and I don't have my bylaws within reach, but a question has been asked: how does legislative staff get on the executive committee? Excellent question. Well, you run for the executive committee, and you will have to submit a letter of candidacy, and you will be assigned a time for an interview, and the nominating committee will make recommendations to the body, and then there's an election. There are specific rules in the bylaws about the number of representatives from each state, and you will get I guess the main thing about this is read the information that you get from NCSL. They post this on the website. When it's time, I will be sending a letter, and it'll be posted, and it'll say, your letters of candidacy must be in by a certain time, and you have to have approval from your leadership to run. And then it's at the summit that the interview process takes place, and the nominating committee reports those who have been nominated for the executive committee. And I don't know, Larry, I know you were around. You could probably, I haven't looked at the executive committee. I don't know how many vacancies there will be. We had 8, I believe, last year, and which was a large number. So you run for a 3-year term, but you have to run again each year, but you don't have to go through the nominating process. You have to say, yes, I do wish to continue to serve, but you're elected to the executive committee basically for a 3-year term. And many, many of the members, staff members of the executive committee come from the staff sections. But it also comes from the standing committees. People come up through the standing committees. Peggy's a perfect example. She came up to the executive committee through the standing committees and then got involved in the staff sections. And one of the things I would like for our staff sections to do is encourage members to participate in the standing committees. And Peggy focused on legislative effectiveness because it's really a wonderful committee to get started on. So this year in Atlanta, it looks like we'll have 3 or 4 vacancies. So not as many as we had last year. Basically, you serve 2 years as a staff section officer, and at the end of that time, because you're a vice chair and then you're a chair, many members at that time decide that they'd like to continue their work with LSCC and run for the executive committee. And the election is at the legislative summit each year. So I don't have any other questions showing up. I really do thank you for participating today. Thank you for your questions. I did want to let you know that this webinar will be archived on NCSL's Meetings webinar page under the title of the webinar, and it should be up no later than Tuesday of next week, but it's very well could be up by Friday of this week. So I'd like for you to look at it again and encourage your staff sections to look at it. We want to motivate our staff section members to run for office within their staff sections, and we just really want to encourage everyone to get involved and stay involved and reach out to your counterparts across the country. And thank you very much for attending today.